The Golden Dragon had been more than just a restaurant, it was my father's dream carved into reality, seasoned with 30 years of sacrifice and determination. Now I stood across the street, watching Victoria, my stepmother of barely 2 years, telling our longtime customers that she was the new owner. Her voice carried the same saccharine sweetness she'd used at Dad's funeral 3 months ago. I'm Michael Chen, 28, a sous chef at one of the city's top restaurants, or at least I was, until I received the news of Dad's decision to sell our family legacy. The Golden Dragon wasn't just any Chinese restaurant, it was the first authentic Sichuan restaurant in our part of the city, a place where Dad had transformed traditional recipes into works of art. It's all perfectly legal, Victoria had smiled, waving the papers at me yesterday. Your father signed everything over to me 2 weeks before his heart attack. He wanted someone with real business experience to modernize the place. I'd spent the last 24 hours in a daze, trying to understand how Dad could have done this. He'd always said the restaurant would be mine when I was ready, after I'd gained experience in other kitchens, learned from everyone, he'd told me, then come back and make the dragon even better. Now, watching Victoria chat with Mrs. Liu, who'd been coming every Sunday for 20 years, I felt my hands curl into fists. Something wasn't right. Dad had been sick those final weeks, yes, but his mind had been sharp as ever. We'd talked about my plans to return to the dragon, about the new fusion dishes I wanted to add to the menu while keeping his classics. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Michael? It's Ray Martinez, your dad's security guard. Ray had worked nights at the Dragon for as long as I could remember. He'd retired last year, but Dad had kept him on the payroll as a consultant, letting him train the new security staff. I need to show you something. Ray's voice was urgent. About the night your father supposedly signed those papers. Meet me at the Silver Cup Cafe in an hour. The Silver Cup was 2 blocks from the Dragon, a quiet spot where Dad used to take his business meetings. As I pushed open the door, the familiar scent of coffee and cinnamon brought back memories of sitting here as a kid, watching Dad negotiate with suppliers and plan expansions. Ray sat in a corner booth, a manila envelope on the table before him. He'd aged since I'd last seen him, his hair more gray than black now, but his eyes were still sharp behind his glasses. Your father installed new security cameras last year, he said without preamble. High-end stuff, with backup cloud storage. He gave me administrative access to help monitor the system. Look at this. He pulled out his tablet, queued up a video. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., 2 weeks before Dad's death. The camera angle showed Dad's office, where Victoria was sitting at his desk, alone. Watch, Ray said softly. On screen, Victoria opened Dad's laptop, inserted a USB drive. She worked for several minutes, then began printing documents. The next clip showed her practicing something on a piece of paper, Dad's signature. I realized with a jolt. There's more. Ray swiped to another video, dated the next night. This one showed Victoria leading Dad into his office. He was moving slowly, looking disoriented. Your father was on strong medication that week, remember? For his back pain. I remembered. Dad had thrown out his back helping move some heavy equipment in the kitchen. The doctors had prescribed something that made him drowsy. The video showed Victoria placing papers in front of Dad, guiding his hand. Even through the grainy footage, I could see that his eyes were unfocused. She waited until he was heavily medicated. Ray's voice was tight with anger. But that's not all. Look at this. He produced several sheets of paper from the envelope. These are the access logs for your father's computer. Someone logged in at 2 a.m. the night before, using his credentials. They accessed templates for sale documents, transfer papers. How did you get all this? Your father wasn't just my boss, Michael, he was my friend for 30 years. When he first got sick, he asked me to keep an eye on things. He was worried about Victoria, said she'd been asking a lot of questions about the restaurant's finances. I stared at the documents, my chef's hands trembling slightly. Why didn't you show this to the police? I tried. They said without proof that your father was incapacitated when he signed. It's just circumstantial. Victoria's lawyer claimed the videos only show her helping an elderly man with paperwork he'd requested. Ray leaned forward. But there's something they don't know about yet. He pulled out one final piece of paper. Your father had a second camera installed in that office, one that Victoria didn't know about. It recorded audio. My heart started racing. Where's that footage? Encrypted, on a secure server. Your father gave me the password, told me to use it only if something happened to him. I waited because, well, I needed to be sure you were ready for what it might reveal. I thought about Victoria standing in my father's restaurant, Preparing to tear down 30 years of tradition to put up some trendy fusion spot. Dad's recipes, his legacy, everything he'd built, gone. I'm ready. Ray nodded slowly. There's something else you should know. I've been watching Victoria's movements since your father died. She's been meeting with developers, big ones, the kind that don't build restaurants, they build luxury condos. The pieces started falling into place. The Golden Dragon sat on prime real estate in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. Development companies had been trying to buy the block for years, but Dad had always refused to sell. How much time do we have? She's meeting with the demolition assessment team next week. Ray's expression hardened. But there's more going on here than just a property grab. Your father suspected something bigger. The night before his heart attack, he called me, said he'd discovered something about Victoria's past, about who she really was. He was going to confront her, but he never got the chance. Dad had collapsed in the restaurant's kitchen the next morning, dead before the ambulance arrived. Natural causes, the doctors had said, but now I wasn't so sure. My phone buzzed, a text from Victoria, meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m., time to discuss your severance package. I showed it to Ray, who smiled grimly, perfect timing, because there's something else in that encrypted footage she really doesn't want anyone to see. As Ray pulled up more files on his tablet, I felt a familiar sensation, the same focus that came over me in a busy kitchen during dinner rush. Dad had taught me that success in both cooking and life came down to timing, preparation, and the courage to act when the moment was right. Tell me everything, I said. Ray glanced at the clock. It's a long story, and some of it, well, let's just say your father wasn't the first restaurateur Victoria married, or the first one to die suddenly. The implications hit me like a blast from the dragon's most powerful wok burner. This wasn't just about saving Dad's restaurant anymore, this was about justice. As Ray began laying out the evidence he'd gathered, I thought about Dad's favorite saying, in cooking and in life, son, the truth is in the details. You just have to know where to look. I was about to discover just how right he'd been. Ray's revelation about Victoria's past kept me awake all night. In my apartment above Ming's noodle shop, I'd moved out of the family home after Victoria moved in. I spent hours reviewing the files he'd shared. Victoria Barnes wasn't even her real name. She'd been Victoria Chen, Victoria Wong, Victoria Liu, a chameleon changing identities as easily as Dad used to change seasonal menus. 3 previous marriages. 3 successful restaurants, 3 sudden deaths ruled as natural causes. Your father figured it out 2 days before he died, Ray explained when we met again early the next morning. He found old newspaper clippings in Victoria's things while looking for some insurance papers, started connecting the dots. The encrypted video footage from Dad's secret camera system was damning. It showed multiple late-night meetings in his office between Victoria and men in expensive suits, developers, lawyers, someone who looked suspiciously like a city planning official, but the most shocking clip was from the night before Dad's death. I know what you did to Thomas Lu's restaurant in Seattle. Dad's voice was clear in the audio. And Robert Wong's place in San Francisco. Did you think I wouldn't investigate the woman I married? Victoria's response was chillingly calm. Those were tragic accidents, James, just like what sometimes happens when elderly restaurant owners don't properly maintain their kitchen equipment. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the Golden Dragon for my meeting with Victoria. The restaurant wouldn't open for lunch service for another 3 hours, but the kitchen staff was already prep cooking. The familiar sounds and smells, ginger and garlic hitting hot oil, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables, strengthened my resolve. Victoria sat at Dad's old desk, her designer suit a stark contrast to the traditional Chinese decor. Michael, good of you to come. I have the severance papers ready. Before we discuss that, I placed my laptop on the desk. There's something you should see. She smiled indulgently. If this is about your father's promises to leave you the restaurant, we both know verbal agreements don't hold up legally. This isn't about verbal agreements. I pulled up the first video file. This is about what really happened in Seattle 5 years ago, at the Golden Palace restaurant. The smile froze on her face. Thomas Lu's daughter never believed it was just a faulty gas line that killed her father. She hired a private investigator, but he couldn't prove anything. Still, he kept everything he found. I turned the laptop so she could see the screen. Ray tracked her down last night. She's very interested in reopening the investigation. Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers tightened on her pen. I don't know what you're talking about. No? How about Robert Wong's place in San Francisco? Another successful restaurant. Another convenient accident. And now the Golden Dragon. I let my voice trail off meaningfully. You're being ridiculous. But her voice had lost its smoothness. I have legal ownership of this restaurant. Your father signed. While heavily medicated, I interrupted. We have footage of that too. But what's really interesting is the audio from the night before Dad died, when you threatened him. She stood up so quickly her chair slammed into the wall. You're bluffing. There's no audio system in this office. Dad was thorough, especially after he found those newspaper clippings about your past. Or should I say, Victoria Chen's past? Or is it Wong? I forget which name you were using when you married Thomas Liu. A new voice spoke from the doorway. We've been wondering that ourselves. Detective Sarah Martinez, Ray's daughter, as it turned out, stepped into the office, accompanied by two uniformed officers. Behind them stood Ray, holding his tablet. Victoria Barnes, Detective Martinez continued. We have some questions about the deaths of Thomas Liu and Robert Wong, and about some interesting transfers from their restaurant accounts before they died. Victoria's face contorted. You have nothing, just circumstantial. We have the encrypted files from James Chen's secure server. Detective Martinez cut in, including audio of you threatening him the night before his death. We have evidence of you accessing his computer to forge documents, and we have the testimony of 3 kitchen staff members about how you insisted on checking the gas lines personally the morning Mr. Chen died. I felt my knees go weak. I hadn't known about that last part. The DA's office is very interested in the pattern, the detective continued. 3 successful restaurant owners, all married to the same woman under different names, all dead within 2 years of the marriage, all their properties sold to development companies within months of their deaths. Victoria's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal's. Suddenly, she lunged for her bag. Gun, Ray shouted, but Detective Martinez was faster. In seconds, Victoria was face down on Dad's antique carpet, being handcuffed. Add attempted assault to the charges, Martinez said calmly, as her partner retrieved a small pistol from Victoria's designer handbag. The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements, evidence processing, and calls from the DA's office. By evening, Victoria was in custody, and I had temporary injunctions stopping any sale or demolition of the Golden Dragon. Your father had one more surprise, Ray told me as we sat in the empty restaurant that night. Check the bottom drawer of his desk. There's a false bottom. Inside, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it, and a USB drive. Dear Michael, Dad's letter began. If you're reading this, then either I'm gone, or I've finally gathered enough evidence to expose Victoria's true nature. I hope it's the latter, but given what I've discovered about her past, I have to be prepared. I never told you why I insisted you work in other kitchens before taking over the Dragon. Yes, I wanted you to learn and grow as a chef, but I also needed you safely away while I investigated the woman who seemed too perfect when she came into our lives. The USB drive contains everything I found: financial records, newspaper articles, private investigator reports. Most importantly, it has videos from every security camera in the restaurant, backed up to a secure server only Ray can access. Victoria thinks she's clever, but she doesn't understand that a good restaurant, like a good life, is built on trust and attention to detail. The Golden Dragon was never just about food. It was about creating a place where memories are made, where traditions are honored while embracing the future. You understand that better than anyone. You're ready now, son. Make it your own, but remember our roots. All my love, Dad. 3 months later, I stood in the Golden Dragon's kitchen, watching the dinner service in full swing. The place was packed. The media coverage of Victoria's arrest and the uncovering of her restaurant murder scheme had actually boosted business. The menu was new, a fusion of Dad's traditional recipes and my own innovations. The critics were calling it a successful blend of old and new, tradition and innovation. Dad would have loved it. Thomas Liu's daughter Janet had flown in from Seattle to testify against Victoria. She was sitting at Dad's favorite table now, sharing stories with Robert Wong's son Kevin about their father's restaurants. Your father was a smart man, Detective Martinez said, stopping by to pick up a takeout order. He knew something was wrong, so he left a trail of digital breadcrumbs. The DA says it's one of the strongest cases she's ever seen. The preliminary hearing had revealed the full scope of Victoria's operation. She'd worked with corrupt developers to identify successful restaurants in valuable locations. She'd charm the owners, always widowers or divorced men, marry them, then arrange accidents once they discovered her true nature. The properties would be sold to her developer partners at below market rates, then demolished for luxury condos. But Dad had outplayed her. His hidden cameras, encrypted files, and careful documentation had exposed not just Victoria, but the entire criminal enterprise. The investigation had expanded to include city officials, developers, even some crooked health inspectors who'd helped cover up the accidents. Ray had refused any reward, but he'd accepted a position as the restaurant's head of security. "Your father was my best friend," he'd said simply. "Protecting his legacy is reward enough." We'd installed a small memorial wall near the entrance, photos of Dad, Thomas Liu, and Robert Wong. Their children had started a foundation to help family-owned restaurants protect themselves from fraudulent takeover schemes. The kitchen door swung open as one of our new servers rushed in. "Chef Mike, Table 12 wants to know if you'll make them your father's special mapo tofu. They say they've been coming here for 20 years. I smiled, reaching for the ingredients I'd prepped that morning, Dad's recipe, with just a few of my own touches. As I worked, I could almost hear his voice. "Remember, son, the secret ingredient isn't in the sauce, it's in the love you put into every dish." The Golden Dragon was more than just a restaurant now. It was a testament to a father's love, a son's determination, and the power of truth to emerge even when buried under layers of deception. As I placed the finished dish on the pass, I caught my reflection in the polished steel of the kitchen counter. For a moment, I thought I saw Dad standing behind me, nodding in approval. The security cameras caught that moment too, their digital eyes watching over the Golden Dragon just as Dad had intended, ensuring that his legacy of truth, tradition, and trust would continue to thrive. Outside, the evening crowds filled the streets of our changing neighborhood, but inside the Golden Dragon, some things remained constant: the sizzle of woks, the steam of dumplings, the laughter of families sharing meals, and the spirit of a man who knew that the best way to protect what you love is to leave behind the truth, preserved as carefully as his secret recipes. Victoria's trial would begin next month. Janet Liu and Kevin Wong would be there, along with me, Ray, and Detective Martinez. But tonight, I had a restaurant to run, recipes to perfect, and memories to honor. Dad had always said that running a restaurant was like telling a story, every dish, every customer, every moment adding to the narrative. Our story had taken an unexpected turn, but its heart remained the same: family, food, and the unshakable power of truth. As the kitchen hummed with activity around me, I picked up my favorite cleaver, Dad's old one, perfectly balanced and sharp as memory, and began preparing for the next chapter. The end.